it's an interesting theory of mind. It's obviously equated to autism,
Yes.
whereby
The lack of theory of mind in autism.
Yes, or context blindness, or
Yes,
context
yes,
as my father and Joe Griffin have coined it, this context blindness.
Yes.
So you're missing some context.
Yes.
So you're not psychopathically disregarding someone else's perspective.
No.
But you're just not seeing it. You're
No.
not really seeing that they have a perspective that's different from yours.
Yes.
And that seems. Do you think that kind of way of perceiving has become more prevalent, almost? I hesitate to call it autistic because that's sort of pathologizing, but it's that kind of sense of missing context in all kinds of ways.
Well, it's impossible to overrate the importance of context, because nothing at all exists in isolation. It only ever exists in relation to other things. Quite simple building blocks of the world, like time and space and motion, can only exist as relative to something else. So it's also true that we are relative to and embedded in a vast context of things, of people, of experience, of knowledge, of the surroundings that we live in nature or in an urban setting or whatever. All these things change. And the context of something is so important that the same thing said or done by one person may be quite different from the same thing said or done by another, because the context in which it was done has changed. Now, since the mechanistic way in which we think, the sort of bureaucratic, rule-bound, algorithmic way in which we deal with things ignores context, it's a disaster. And I think that both as a society and probably in the individual psyche, we're beginning to lose that overall importance, that you can never deal with something out of context. Because what we believe is that by breaking things down into component parts, we really understand them. But it's just as true that you only understand the parts if you know the whole that they're going to be composing, because in that context, they're different. So the loss of context is grievous, and I think that is part of a drift towards, in society, a more left hemisphere way of thinking, because one thing that absolutely differs is that the right hemisphere appreciates context, the left hemisphere doesn't. For this reason, the right hemisphere, or for this and other reasons, the right hemisphere is able to understand poetry, metaphor and jokes in a way that the left hemisphere struggles to do, because it doesn't understand what this is doing in a context.
So, people's statements seem to be taken out of context a lot.
And taken literally.
And certainly on social media.
Yes.
Somebody would make a joke, perhaps an ill-advised joke, because they're not seeing the context of the way people take jokes.
Absolutely.
And then it's taken out of context, and then it's seen that they're ad hominemly attacked.
Yes.
From all sides, that sort of thing seems to be quite prevalent.
You can't really understand a gobbet of information unless you know about the context. You can't understand a single short phrase unless you know all the rest that was being said and the way in which it's being said. Another thing that we've lost track of, and is another thing the right hemisphere is much more able to pick up, is the manner in which something is done, what I call the how of it, not just the what happened. So, a certain action could be a highly moral one or a highly immoral one, depending entirely on the context in which it was done. And of course, another thing is that we don't know until we see the wider context whether something is good or bad. There's a lovely Chinese story about, who knows, good luck, bad luck.
Yes.
It's a story in which certain things happen and all the neighbours say, oh, well, good luck, and the person says, well, good luck, bad luck, and then something bad happens, they go, oh, bad luck, good luck. In other words, we don't know where these things are going until we see the whole picture.
I know that story. I didn't realise it was a Chinese story.
It's Chinese, I believe.
I know the one, his loses a horse.
Bad luck.
Terrible, and then he comes back with other horses, and then his son breaks his leg on the horse.
That's it. And then the son doesn't get recruited to the army.
Exactly right.
Yes.
So you have to see the bigger pattern, and part of the bigger pattern is time, of course.
Time is very important, and one of the things that left hemisphere does is to detemporize. It takes things out of the flow, both of time and everything else. So it's not just narrowing down, as it were, spatially. It's also narrowing down in the thickness of the moment. it actually loves a snapshot. And a snapshot is what you capture with a camera. And the left hemisphere is, after all, out to capture something, to grasp it, to pin it down. And if it's constantly moving in time and space, it's very hard to do so. So it tends to isolate and freeze what it captures.